Hi, this is the evaluation of the orderIT trading system for December the 14th, 2020. We had 13 trades on that day. 1 was a buy and 12 were short sells. First trade was FLGT. That's Fulgent Genetics Incorporated. It tripped to 12:30.57 p.m. at a price of 48.30, and it was a short sell. It closed at 44.77, down 10.23%, so that's a positive trade. And quick look at the indications. OBV's not showing heavily downwards. It was moving downwards in general late morning to mid-afternoon. Went up at the end of the day though. MACD showing roughly the same thing. DI showing actually negative and very negative in the afternoon. Mid-afternoon it was pushing very negative, but you can see also was making a bit of a recovery. Bollinger Band just show a steady decline and a moving sideways. Next trade is KIRK, Kirkland Incorporated. It tripped at 2:45.15 p.m. at a price of $17.29, a short sell. It closed at $16.99, down 3.68%. That's another positive trade. Indicators are showing chart's not lined up. 12:15. Actually, my data is not lined up at all, so I'm actually looking at the wrong charts. Let's see if I've got this organized properly. And I don't have it. Let's start this over again. First trade is CAH. Cardinal Health Incorporated. It tripped at 12:15 p.m. at a price of 54.06. It was a short sell. It closed at 53.55, down 1.34%. You can see it's making a recovery. It actually recovered with a loss yesterday, so that's a positive trade. And that actually is a trade we were looking at yesterday. Again, like I said, just from the initial point, a different trade that I was referring to, obviously. But moving downwards, upwards at the end of the day. DI showing strong downwards across the board. Bollinger Band downwards, and a steady movement, sideways movement in the afternoon, mid-afternoon. Okay, next trade is D. Yes, it lines up with my chart. Okay, so D. Dominion Energy Incorporated. It tripped at 12:20.03 p.m. at a price of $74.54. It was a short sell. It closed at $74.47, down 0.59%, so that's another positive trade. Yes, it closed below its triple price. And that trade bouncing back and forth OBV-wise, so nothing heavily there. You can see morning it was dropping. MACD is actually showing somewhat a positive movement, MACD, for most of the day. Look, early morning, late morning is where it dropped. Mid-afternoon, bouncing back and forth, made a recovery that. So it was moving down, but it was moving upwards also. Like we're talking almost 50% on MACD. DI, though, look, DI showing somewhat. You can see more DI is more negative than positive. It was making a bit of a recovery today. Bollinger Band kind of like is just showing the results of those back and forth and kind of like inconsistencies to some extent. It was somewhat moving sideways. It dropped and then moved sideways. Next trade is FIS. Fidelity National Information Services. It tripped at 12:28 p.m. at a price of $146.39. It was a short sell. closed at 144.22, down 2.44%. That's another positive trade. As it closed below its tripping price. OBV, yeah, OBV just showing it was just dropping. MACD, morning, early afternoon, late afternoon dropping. Native recovery early afternoon and then bouncing back and forth. MACD wise. DI is pretty much across the board all negative, very negative early afternoon, late afternoon. Bollinger Band, yeah, just dropped. So that stock is definitely dropping. Next trade is GLNG, Golar LNG Limited. They tripped at 12:25:07 p.m. at a price of 9.34. It was a short sell. It closed the day at 9.36. It was down 2.24%, but it closed above its tripping price. You can see just from the price chart, it was somewhat moving sideways after it dropped. 12.25. Let's see, 12.25 right here. So it dropped. And 9.36, 9.42, 9.36, 9.34. At the end of the day, it came down again, but there's no 100% positive movement below its trading price, so that is not a positive trade. OBV came down, moved sideways, bouncing back a little bit. Afternoon bounced back quite a bit actually. MACD, surprisingly, is actually showing somewhat a positive move. Even though it did drop and tripped around where it dropped a bit, but in general that movement was moving positive. It did revert back at the end of the day, so that's interesting. DI, negative in the morning, positive in the afternoon, and then negative in the afternoon. That again showing that it was moving sideways. I would consider that a possible just because the indicators are showing somewhat more sideways than not, but again, at the end of the day it was showing that it was moving negative, so there may have been a recovery the next day after on the stock. Not showing any pre-market movement, so. Next trade is FRO. That's Frontline Limited. Tripped at 12:25:09 p.m. at a price of 6.67, a short sell. Closed at 6.68. It was down 0.89%. Another stock just from the price movement, moving sideways, and again after its tripping price. 12.25. So right around here. 6.66. A very short, probably maybe 5, 6 minutes where it was below. Not really enough time. I'll consider that a good possible, just because there was a point in time where it was down below and it moved sideways just from the price activity. The indicators are showing that OBV was down somewhat, just showing maybe sideways movement. MACD was actually showing that it was moving positive late morning, early afternoon was dropping a bit, made a recovery and then moved sideways, so that's not really showing strong. The DI showing that it was negative pretty much all morning, and early afternoon went positive, a little bit negative, and that, so Weather Band basically showing it moving sideways, so it just happened to catch it right when it was moving downwards, but nothing strong. Next trade is FLGT. That's Fugilent Genetics Incorporated. They tripped at 12:57 p.m. at a price of 48.30. A short sell. It closed at 44.77, down 10.23%. So that was down quite a bit. So that's another positive trade. OBV showing that it was downward movement. MACD downward at the end of the day, early afternoon downward a little bit, but somewhat basically moving sideways for most of the other periods of time MACD wise. DI though is showing it was very early morning very negative, and pretty much DI showing pretty much negative across the board. In the late day afternoon it was showing it was actually heavily negative. And Bollinger Band just showing a steady drop, so that stopped it. Next trade is IIPR. That's Innovative Industries Properties. It tripped at 12:55:16 p.m. and it was a buy sell. It tripped at 171.14. It closed at 168.62. It was up 4.69% at the end of the day. So it actually had a good increase. It just happened to close below its rise point at 12:55. So roughly around this area, and it's a possible trade, but nothing heavily to show. It actually did increase. You can see just from the price movement, it was technically moved sideways and then dropped a little bit at the end of the day. I will consider it a pause just because of the fact that it was moving sideways for most of the time period after tripping. OBV though is actually showing that it was moving negative at the end of the day, or afternoon to the end of the day. MACD actually showing the same thing. It rised and dropped, moved sideways and dropped. DI is actually showing a good amount of positive movement, but at the end of the day it was actually moving very negative, so that's a good one. So I'm going to leave it as a positive, even though DI is showing that it was heavily down at the end of the day. And to me that just could be the aspect of maybe some getting out of the stock at the end of the day, just to obviously make a profit. And yesterday was actually down quite heavily, another down day. The good thing is early morning activity is showing positive, so hopefully the markets will be positive when they open today. But yesterday they were very negative, and this may be just a result that the markets were negative, people were just getting out because the stock was making money and they wanted to get out before anything drastic happened. Next trade is DAL. That's Delta Airlines Incorporated. It tripped at 2:15:03 p.m. at a price of 41.14. It was a short sell. Closed at 40.69, down 2.52%. It recovered a little bit early morning, so it's recovering, but it was still by the end of the day a positive trade. So leave it at that. The indicators are showing OBD somewhat sideways, nothing concrete. Some points obviously was dropping, but we're not talking a consistent drop, so that OBD is not showing it downwards heavily. Interesting, MACD is showing the mid-afternoon and late afternoon, well, let's say, beginning of mid-afternoon and late afternoon it was dropping. The rest of the time it was moving positive. Interestingly, DI gives us some of the more concrete aspects of direction. So the indicator is what it's for, is direction. It's showing a more consistent negative movement, and you can see at the end of the day it was actually starting to move heavily negative. Early morning and late afternoon it was moving heavily negative. And Bollinger Band, Bollinger Band's kind of showing the consequence. MACD is somewhat saying there's not really much going on there. It was somewhat bouncing back and forth. And Bollinger Band basically showing that it dropped, and somewhat was just moving sideways for most of the day. And at the end of the day, it just went and dropped again. So positive, but indicators. Next trade is KRRK. And that is Crypto Incorporated. It tripped at 2:45:15 p.m. at a price of $17.21. It was a short sell. It closed today at $16.99, down 2.68%. It closed below its indication, so you can see another positive trade. And the indicators are showing OBD, yes, OBD just dropping. MACD dropping in pretty much dropping most of the time in the afternoon. There's a period where it was recovering a little bit, but most of the afternoon it was dropping, but not a heavy drop, just a steady drop. DI is showing very negative in the morning, pretty much pretty strongly negative for most of the day. Again, there's a little bit of recovery here mid-afternoon, late mid-afternoon, and then still went down negative. Bollinger Band is showing it was just dropping that stock. The next stock is MS. Morgan Stanley, tripped at 2:50 p.m. at a price of 62.31. That was a short sell. It closed the day at 61.88, down 2.27%. So that's another positive trade. You can see it's making recovery here in the morning. In fact, it's making recovery over the thing. So from the point that it tripped, it's actually above the tripping price. So maybe it's something say if you didn't catch this at the end of the day, it would not be an early morning closing because the stock is recovering. So just the way stocks move and the way people react to things and how the market's really controlled. So if you're not familiar with the stock market, you find that they're actually very, very, very much controlled. And people make things perform the way they want to perform in the big brokerage firms. OBD somewhat showing a negative, a steady downward movement, more heavily downwards in the morning and the late afternoon, excuse me. MACD actually, this is showing a consistent downward trend also. DI pretty much across the board, maybe a couple of points where it was really positive, but nothing drastic. Bollinger Band showing again that steady downward trend. Next trade is NEM. That's New Melt Corporation. They tripped at 2:05:07 p.m. at a price of 57.74. It was a short sell. Excuse me. It closed 57.56, down 2.22%. It did close below its tripping price. But look, you can see it made a recovery above its tripping price. So another stock that would have been a question. Well, would have been not a positive trade if you were only able to catch it the day after. As you can see, it's made a recovery, but again, it's still a positive trade because it closed the day below its tripping price. OBD, moving steadily downwards. MACD downwards in the afternoon, moving positive early afternoon negative for the rest of the day. DI is showing strongly negative in the morning, or let's say early afternoon, I guess, because when we started capturing the late morning. So negative when it started, and then DI is pretty much showing negative across the board. It was making a little bit of recovery in Bollinger Band, just showing a steady drop. Next trade is IBM. IBM is IBM International Business Machines. It tripped at 3:45 p.m. at a price of 123.85. It was a short sell. It did close the day below its tripping price. We're getting near the end of the day, 15 minutes before close, so this was right at the end of the day. But as you can see, there was still time to do some trading, and we were able to get out just before. We were able to get out while it was below its tripping price. It would have been a positive trade. And the indicators are showing OBD dropping, MACD pretty much bouncing back and forth, but as much as anything, almost a sideways move. They're down the end of the day, so that's a good thing. So, MACD is not showing any heavy movement there. DI though, very negative from the point of capture, which was late morning. It was somewhat good negative movement. It was very, very good, not heavily negative, but it was a good strong negative on DIYs, and Bollinger Band just showed a drop. Next trade is CSCO, Cisco Systems. They tripped at 345.02 p.m. at a price of 44.20, a short sell. It closed at 44.24. It was down 0.18%. You can see it's made a recovery here in early morning, so this one you would have had to gotten out. Let's see, 345. There's nothing there. That, and you can see, I'm just going by that. It's very late in the day. There's not much really to evaluate it on. But early morning activity is showing that this was making a positive movement above the tripping price. So I consider that not a positive trade. OBB, somewhat movement downwards. MACD, late morning down, but it was pretty much moving down for most of from the afternoon. It was moving up on a regular basis, and in late afternoon, which is where it tripped, it was moving downwards. Interesting enough, DI is actually showing a strong downward, well, not strong, well, it's strong, yeah, strong, not heavily strong, but strong downward movement. And Bollinger Bands actually is showing you price-wise that it was moving somewhat steadily downwards. So, but the indicators are showing that this is a possible trade, just because of the fact that it was somewhat consistently moving downwards on the indicators on the general purpose. Not 100%, but it was moving downwards. But the price, to me, just doesn't give a good feeling, honestly. The opening is opening up above that it's tripping. So to me, that's not a possible trade. So I consider it negative. So we have 9 out of 13 trades that were positive, which is 69.2%. It's still a good day. It's not high positive, but it's still a good day. There was a good amount of possible. If you put the positives in there, you would have over 90%. Positive, if you consider possible trades as positive, but I don't, so I'll leave it at 69.2%. So again, not a bad day for a day that was very heavily negative. So it just shows you the system can still identify trades or stock that is potentially profit making, even though the markets are moving negative. I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much.